Have you ever wondered whether everything that happens in life is either good or bad? Don't worry, you're not the only one who's been baffled by these questions. Stoicism, an ancient philosophy from Greece and Rome, has been around for centuries with its challenging views on good and evil. Yes, you heard that right. This philosophy isn't as simple as categorizing things as black or white. It requires us to dig deep, reflect, and even change the way we view the world around us. But before you start panicking, let me take you on an exciting journey into the world of the Stoics, where nothing is absolute and everything depends on how we react. You'll discover how concepts like good and evil may not be as simple as they seem, and how Stoicism can completely change the way you view life. And hey, if you want to continue this journey with me, don't forget to subscribe. I promise you won't want to miss out on the next discoveries. Sometimes, just one click can change the way you approach life. Ready? Let's get started. 1. Understanding Stoicism and the concept of good and evil. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, originating in Greece and Rome, that has been around for centuries and still has a strong influence on the way modern people view and deal with life. To better understand Stoicism's view of good and evil, we need to start by familiarizing ourselves with the basic principles of this philosophy. Stoicism is not a simple moral system where every action is clearly classified as good or bad. Instead, this philosophy focuses on how each individual reacts to the events that occur in their lives. Stoicism holds that life is a series of events, and the only thing we can control is our own response to those events. This leads to a core Stoic principle. It is not what happens to us that determines our life, but how we react to what happens. In other words, no event is inherently good or bad. The value of an event only emerges from how we react to it. In this context, Stoicism's notion of good and evil becomes more complex than that of conventional ethical systems. Rather than judging an action as good or bad based on its consequences, Stoicism encourages us to focus on self-control and how we respond to any situation. For example, an event like losing a job might be considered a bad thing by many people. However, from a Stoic perspective, the event itself is neither good nor bad. What matters is how you react to it. You can choose to wallow in sadness and disappointment, or you can see it as an opportunity to explore new possibilities, grow as a person, and find new directions in life. How you react determines the value of the event, not the event itself. One of the famous Stoic philosophers, Epictetus, said, "It is not things that bother us, but our attitude toward them." This quote illustrates well how Stoicism views good and evil. Nothing is inherently good or bad. It all depends on how we choose to perceive and respond to them. Another important point to note is that the Stoic view of good and evil is subjective. That is, there is no universal standard that can be applied to everyone. What you consider good may be bad to someone else, and vice versa. This leads to flexibility in how Stoicism views situations. For example, in a complex situation like someone being betrayed by a friend, many people may view it as bad. But within the framework of Stoicism, this does not mean that the entire situation is bad. It depends on how you view and learn from this experience. You can see it as a lesson in trust and prudence, making you stronger and wiser in the future. Self-control is an important aspect of Stoicism. This philosophy teaches that each person needs to control his or her thoughts, emotions, and actions, regardless of external events. This requires a certain steadfastness and wisdom in responding to situations. Stoicism does not encourage us to ignore our emotions or pretend that they do not exist. Instead, it teaches us how to manage our emotions wisely, not letting them control our lives. When faced with difficulties, challenges, or any situation that can cause negative feelings, what is important is not the event itself, but how we stay calm and respond to it rationally. Thus, Stoicism offers a new perspective on good and evil. It is not a moral system with clear standards, but a flexible approach based on self-control and how we choose to respond to life. The wisdom and intelligence in how we respond is the determining factor in the value of events in our lives. Stoicism encourages us to live consciously, self-control, and aim for personal growth, rather than being caught up in conventional moral judgments of good and evil. 2. The subjective nature of good and evil. Good and evil are two common concepts in all cultures, religions, and philosophy. However, in Stoicism, good and evil are not considered objective concepts, meaning that no action or event is inherently good or bad. Instead, good and evil depend entirely on how each individual perceives and evaluates the event. This means that the same event, action, or outcome can be considered good or bad, depending on the perspective and experience of the person making the assessment. To better understand how Stoicism views good and evil, let's consider a concrete example. Suppose a father sees his child choosing a field of study that he considers bad or has no future. He may think that his child is making a wrong decision and that this will lead to failure. However, after many years, the child becomes very successful in his chosen field. This story clearly illustrates that what is initially judged as bad can become good over time and circumstance. This shows that the assessment of good or bad is not an immutable truth. Instead, it can change based on experience, circumstances, and time. What we think of as a mistake today may turn out to be a major turning point in our lives or the lives of others. This is one of the main reasons why Stoicism does not believe in absolute values of good and evil. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, wrote in his Meditations, "What hinders the action promotes the action. What hinders the path becomes the path." This quote emphasizes that challenges and difficulties, often considered bad, can actually be opportunities for us to grow and improve ourselves. Instead of viewing obstacles as negative, we can see them as opportunities to learn and grow. This also means that events that we consider undesirable or unfavorable can become necessary steps toward success or personal growth. In this context, Stoicism does not encourage us to judge things as good or bad too quickly. Instead, this philosophy advises us to calm down and consider things more carefully. If we can see the hidden opportunities in difficulties and challenges, we will be able to face them more positively. This will not only help us overcome difficulties in life, but also make us stronger, smarter, and wiser. In addition, being subjective in judging good and evil also helps us develop tolerance and sympathy for others. If we realize that what we consider bad may not be bad for others, we will find it easier to accept and respect their views. This also encourages us to reconsider our judgments, so as not to be bound by our inherent views but to broaden our horizons. Finally, the subjectivity in judging good and evil reminds us of the importance of self-control and personal responsibility. Instead of letting the concepts of good and evil influence our decisions and actions, we should focus on developing reason and wisdom to make the best decisions. In this way, we can live a life that is true to our values without being led astray by the subjective judgments of others. Thus, in Stoicism, good and evil are not fixed or objective concepts. They depend on each person's perspective and perception. And this opens up opportunities for flexibility, tolerance, and personal growth. 3. Applying Stoic concepts to modern life. Positive outlook in every situation. When we look at everyday life, it is not difficult to see that everyone has a different way of assessing what happens around them. What one person considers good, another may consider bad, and vice versa. This stems from a truth that Stoicism has emphasized for thousands of years. The value of an event lies not in its essence, but in how we react to and perceive it. For example, losing a job is often seen as a bad thing. A person who loses a job may feel anxious, uncertain, and even hopeless. However, in the Stoic perspective, what matters is not the event, losing your job, but how you respond to it. If you see this event as an opportunity to find a new passion, to challenge yourself in other areas, or to change your life in a more positive direction, then this event is no longer a bad thing. Concrete example from life can illustrate this point. Let's say you have just been fired from a job you have had for many years. At first, this can be a big shock. You may feel hurt, unappreciated, and worried about the future. But if you apply a Stoic perspective, you will see that this can be an opportunity to start a new life. Maybe this job has made you unhappy for a long time, but you have been afraid to change because you are afraid of the risk. Now, with this unexpected change, you can bravely face new challenges, find a job that you truly love, or even start a business to fulfill your dreams. Epictetus, one of the famous Stoic philosophers, once said, "It is not things that upset us, but our attitude towards them." This quote emphasizes that our emotions and reactions to a situation are entirely dependent on how we perceive it. If we choose to look at things positively, we can turn challenges into opportunities for growth. Another way to apply Stoicism to modern life is to practice gratitude and acceptance. Instead of complaining about things we cannot change, we can learn to accept them and focus on the good things we have. For example, if you lose your job, instead of focusing on your feelings of disappointment, try thinking about the things you still have: your health, family, friends, and the opportunity to find a new job. Gratitude will not only help you feel better about your current situation, but it will also help you create a positive attitude to face the challenges ahead. Additionally, Stoicism encourages us to focus on what we can control and let go of what we cannot control. For example, if you lose your job, you can't change what your company decides, but you can control how you respond to it. You can choose to learn new skills, seek other opportunities, or even change your career path entirely. By focusing on the things you can control, you'll feel more confident and empowered, rather than caught up in anxiety and fear about the future. In conclusion, when we apply the Stoic perspective to modern life, we can see that every event in life, whether positive or negative, presents an opportunity to learn and grow. It is not what happens, but how we choose to respond to it that matters. By staying positive, accepting reality, and focusing on the things we can control, we can overcome any challenge and live a more meaningful life. Number 4. Vicious circles and contradictions. When we discuss Stoicism and the concept of good and evil, it is easy to fall into a vicious circle, especially when trying to clearly define what is good or bad. For example, when discussing the atrocities committed by a historical figure like Hitler, many people will quickly conclude that those actions were bad in the conventional sense. But when viewed from a Stoic perspective, this question cannot be answered so simply. Stoicism does not focus on categorizing actions or events as being absolutely good or bad. Instead, Stoic philosophers focus on how we respond to and learn from those events. For example, rather than labeling a historical event as bad simply because it caused suffering, Stoicism encourages us to look at how that event can provide valuable lessons that can help us live better lives. This does not mean that Stoicism denies the existence of bad actions or suffering that humans endure. In fact, Stoicism acknowledges that harmful actions and suffering do exist. However, rather than focusing on criticizing or condemning these actions, this philosophy emphasizes that the value of actions lies in how we respond to them and use those experiences to grow ourselves. For example, when faced with a negative event, such as a war or an act of injustice, a Stoic would not stop at labeling the event as bad, but would ask themselves, what can I learn from this event? And how can I use these lessons to become better and help others? This gives us a different perspective on good and evil in life. Instead of getting stuck in rigid moral judgments, Stoicism encourages us to look at things differently, focusing on growing ourselves and living a meaningful life. This also helps us avoid negative emotions, such as anger or resentment, when faced with events or actions that we cannot control. Another important aspect of Stoicism is tolerance and love for others, even when they make mistakes. This does not mean that we condone bad behavior, but we need to understand that everyone has their own reasons for acting, even if those reasons may be flawed. Instead of judging, Stoicism encourages us to understand and empathize with others and guide them if possible. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoic philosophers, said, "Human beings are capable of loving even those who have wronged them." This is a reminder that instead of labeling or judging others negatively, we should seek to treat them with compassion and love, thereby helping them and ourselves grow. Ultimately, the important point that Stoicism wants to convey is that we should not focus too much on categorizing things as absolute good or bad. Instead, we should focus on how we can respond positively to every situation and use those experiences to improve ourselves and the society around us. This will not only help us live a more peaceful life, but also help us become better people, able to face all the challenges in life calmly and clearly. Number 5. The logic behind Stoicism. Stoicism is an ancient philosophy, but it still brings practical values to modern life. One of the key points of this philosophy is how it views good and evil, not through the lens of fixed social rules, but through the self-control and wisdom of each individual. Stoicism does not deny that there is a need for a moral system to guide human actions and thoughts. However, this system is not a set of rigid rules imposed by society, but rather a set of values that each individual develops for himself. According to the Stoics, it is not the responsibility of others to determine what is good or bad, but our own. This requires each person to use reason and wisdom to consider and evaluate each situation objectively and deeply. For example, in a difficult situation, we can choose to see it as a challenge that helps us grow, rather than seeing it as a misfortune. This does not mean that we deny the difficulties or pain, but that we do not let them control our emotions and action. This self-control is the core of the Stoic philosophy. Stoicism values the use of reason to evaluate them. They believe that humans have the ability to use their intellect to understand the nature of any situation and make rational decisions. This means that instead of reacting emotionally to events in our lives, we should stop, think, and respond rationally. For example, someone treats you badly. Instead of immediately feeling angry and retaliating, Stoicism recommends asking yourself why that person behaved that way. They may be going through something you don't know about, or they may simply not understand how their actions are hurting you. This way, instead of reacting based on emotion, you'll be able to make more rational decisions, perhaps forgiving or finding a way to resolve the issue in a more amicable way. One of the important lessons from Stoicism is not to let external events unduly influence our emotions and actions. This doesn't mean you should be cold or insensitive, but rather that you need to control how you react to those events. Marcus Aurelius, a famous Stoic philosopher, said, "You have power over your mind, not over external events. Realize this and you will find power." This quote reminds us that, no matter how difficult life may be, we can control how we react. This is the greatest power any person can possess. Finally, Stoicism teaches us not to rush to judge anything as good or bad. Instead, take the time to think, consider, and learn more about the situation before making a judgment. This not only gives you a more accurate view of things, but also helps you avoid making bad decisions based on immediate emotions. In life, we often encounter situations that we consider bad, but when we look back after a while, we may realize that they have taught us valuable lessons. Therefore, Stoicism encourages us not to label things as good or bad immediately, but to try to understand the nature of things. Stoicism gives us a fresh perspective on good and evil. Instead of relying on rigid rules of society, it encourages each individual to build their own value system based on reason and wisdom. In this way, we can control our emotions and actions, live a meaningful life, and avoid being overly influenced by external events. This not only helps us live better, but also helps us face life's challenges with more calmness and wisdom. 6. Tolerance and love. Tolerance and love are core values in Stoic philosophy, and they offer a different approach to how we view and treat those around us, especially when they make mistakes or cause harm. Stoicism does not encourage us to judge or punish harshly. Instead, it encourages us to look deeper into the reasons behind other people's actions, thereby developing empathy and compassion. When Marcus Aurelius said that man is capable of loving even those who have wronged him, he was emphasizing the importance of not letting resentment dominate our emotions. This does not mean that we should ignore or accept every bad behavior that others may commit. Instead, it is important to understand that everyone makes mistakes, and that judging them may not bring about any positive change. Rather than focusing on condemnation or retaliation, Stoicism encourages us to find ways to help those who make mistakes. This can be done by guiding them, pointing out where they went wrong, and helping them see a better path. This approach not only helps others grow, but also helps us live more peaceful and compassionate lives. Tolerance does not mean weakness or complacency. It requires patience and perseverance to stand firm in our values without letting negative emotions overwhelm us. Tolerance is the ability to see the real person behind their mistakes and help them become better. It is choosing love and compassion over anger and hatred. Overall, Stoicism's tolerance and love are not only ways to treat others, but also ways to live a more meaningful life. By practicing these values, we not only help others, but also help ourselves become better and stronger in our journey through life. Stoicism, with its unique perspective on good and evil, gives us a new and deeper perspective on life. Instead of being stuck in fixed moral judgments, Stoicism encourages us to look at things differently, focusing on self-development and helping others. In the modern world where moral standards are often conflicting and changing, applying Stoic philosophy can help us live a more satisfying life. By controlling our reactions and seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us, we can navigate life's challenges with calm and wisdom. Ultimately, whether or not you agree with Stoicism's views on good and evil, there's no denying that the philosophy offers valuable lessons about how we should live, treat others, and deal with life's difficulties. Reflect on these principles and see how they can help you live a happier and more meaningful life.